again, we want to thank everybody for being here. So welcome. It's a couple minutes after the hour. We're going to go ahead and get started because we want to give as much time as we can to our really dynamic speaker that we have with us tonight, a graduate of St. Edward's University, member of the Board of Trustees, a local and international business leader in business and in technology, and then as well, a very active global citizen through his work and involvement with the Vatican, through the Laudato Si initiative and to the Francesco Economic Council. Really special pleasure for us tonight to have Kyle Ballarta with us. So as we get started, let's just very quickly take a moment to tell you again, if you're new to us, tell you a little bit about the Holy Cross Institute at St. Edward's University. It's really our honor to continue to tell the story and to share the mission, the future, the past, the present, and future of the story of the family of Holy Cross. That is the priests, the brothers, the sisters who over the last 200 years have been providing ministry primarily through education around the world. Today, there are 120 Holy Cross schools, colleges, and universities. And the work of the Holy Cross Institute is to support those school leaders and those school ministers by developing resources, conducting academic research, running programs like this webinar series, which has been running for 2 years now, workshops and training and professional services. We also do direct support, executive coaching for our school leaders, principals, and presidents. And then we're very active on social media, as you can see, on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, our YouTube channel. We are going to be recording. We are recording this as we speak. And so you'll be able to view this recording tomorrow on the YouTube channel. As well, we really encourage you. We're excited to have just released within the last 30 days a free daily prayer and reflection opportunity offered through the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. That's the Daily Moreau app. So if you are an Apple or Google user, Android user, you can just go into your the appropriate store there, and it is free. And each day you'll be able to receive a daily reflection. So just really a wonderful opportunity to remember our roots and our heritage and reflect each day on our own responsibility to continue that. Next slide, please, AJ. I mentioned there's 120 schools, colleges, and universities all over the world in 21 countries that bear the name of the family of Holy Cross, including the 28 K-12 schools that you see here in the United States, and then those 8 colleges and universities that are depicted on this map. So we're really very proud to be a part of this broader family of Holy Cross. And to get us started tonight, we're going to begin in prayer. So I'm going to invite my colleague here in the Holy Cross Institute office, the Assistant Director, Megs Turgeon, to lead us in prayer. Megs?
Thank you so much, Dr. Clark. Let's begin in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, following the example of your Son, you have called us to participate in building your kingdom of justice, love, and peace. As we endeavor to do this work, we ask you to send forth your Spirit, our great helper, to infuse us with heavenly virtues. Instill in us, we pray, an abiding respect for human life and dignity, a firm resolve to serve our communities, a keen awareness of our responsibilities toward our neighbors, an unyielding commitment to the poor and vulnerable, a high regard for workers and the dignity of their labor, a deep-seated solidarity with the suffering and oppressed, and a benevolent spirit of stewardship over your creation. Rescue us, we pray, from the injustices we suffer and the injustices we inflict, so that, as one human family, we may attain to the freedom and flourishing for which you have created us. Grant us, Father, the competence to see these injustices and the courage to act against them. This mission is yours, and so is the strength to accomplish it. Be with us, then, as we strive to be virtuous citizens of this present world, and as we train to become saintly citizens of your heavenly kingdom. We thank you in a special way for the gift of our speakers this evening. We ask your blessing upon them. Grant them the gifts of wisdom, eloquence, and conviction, that they may inspire us to action on your behalf. Grant us, their listeners, eyes to see and ears to hear. We ask this and all things through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Thanks. Thank you for that beautiful prayer. And the image, by the way, that you see on the screen, I know the Maronite Sisters of Holy Cross would be so proud to see that displayed. That is from the Mother House in Le Mans, France. A beautiful statue there of St. Joseph teaching the young Jesus how to read and write. And that prayer is an original prayer written by Megs. All of the prayers that that have been written this year have also been published, are available through the Holy Cross Institute website. If you care to take a look at those and use those for any of your events or any of your gatherings within the schools or elsewhere. Next slide, please. I want to take a quick moment to thank tonight's sponsor. So the Holy Cross Institute at St. Edward's University really is very honored to have been granted a grant through the Catholic Climate Covenant, Catholic Climate Covenant in partnership with the Victory Null Sisters. And maybe the founder of the Catholic Climate Covenant is Dan Mislin. Maybe he can tell us a little bit more about that. Dan, thank you so much for your support. Thanks for joining us tonight. And we'll give you a couple of minutes. We'd love to hear a little bit more about Catholic Climate Covenant and the work that you're doing.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Clark. And hello, everyone from Washington, D.C. So Catholic Climate Covenant has been around since 2006, and we were formed to try to help inform, engage, enlighten the Catholic community on Catholic social teaching, particularly as it's related to the issue of climate change. So the bishops wrote a statement on climate change in 2001. Of course, everybody knows about Laudato Si that the Pope Francis wrote in 2015. And before that, there's lots of other Catholic teaching, frankly, going all the way back to Genesis and the creation stories. What we do is we have a number of programs that we're particularly proud of. At the moment, we're heavily engaged with the Vatican and the US bishops in implementing the Laudato Si action platform. So if you go to that website, laudatosiactionplatform.org, you can learn a little bit about that. And you can look at US efforts in a website called godsplanet.us. Godsplanet.us is the website for US participation in the platform. We also have a Catholic Energies program where we're helping to install solar and energy efficiency projects in Catholic facilities around the country. We've put in lots of megawatts of solar right now. And what that is an opportunity then for those institutions to also talk about Laudato Si and care for creation. We just began a year ago a young adult outreach program. So we're trying to capture the energy of young adults around the issue of climate change and direct that towards working in their parishes and in their places where they study and where they work to try to help move this agenda, because it is an urgent agenda for sure. There is becoming a climate crisis, not just a climate issue. And then finally, we have about 20 Catholic organizations that partner with us. So we are a network of networks, all of the big ones, Catholic Charities USA, Catholic Relief Services, some of those that you've heard of. And so we're just happy to be able to provide a little bit of support. We gave out about 100 grants of $1,000 each this past fall. St. Edward's and the Institute was one of those recipients. So we're happy to be able to kind of spark these local efforts with just a little bit of seed money. So I'm just delighted to be here tonight and to listen to our speaker.
Thank you, Dan. Really, again, a great honor for us to be able to partner with you and to learn from the great work that you and the Catholic Climate Covenant have been doing for so long. And we're so grateful for the grant opportunity that you provided. For us here at the Holy Cross Institute, the programs that we provide all of these programs at no charge to anyone. So whether it's an in-person event like the upcoming convocation, webinar series like this, some of the publications that we develop, we don't charge our community for those things, and it's only possible because of the generosity of sponsors. And in this case, that was a competitive grant. So I'm glad to know that the readers of the grant saw the nature of the work that we're doing and recognized the difference that we're making. So thank you. I think speaking of sponsorships, AJ, next slide. We always invite people to help support us. You can contact me directly if you would like to help us in any way, whether it's supporting us for the upcoming convocation or throughout the year. Next slide. Okay. And so really, again, our pleasure to have with us tonight as well, Dr. Montserrat Fuentes. Dr. Monse Fuentes is the president, the new president here at St. Edward's University. And gosh, part of what I'm so proud of being a part of St. Edward's is from day one, she's come in and established this university as a destination university for a more just world. And tonight's program speaks to that commitment to justice. And so, Dr. Fuentes, welcome tonight. And I want to turn it over to you to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, and good evening. So thank you to Dr. Clark and the team at the Holy Cross Institute for the opportunity to be a part of this event. It is such a privilege for me to introduce tonight's featured speaker, Mr. Kyle Ballarta. Kyle is an entrepreneur, venture capitalist, innovation scientist, and an artist. He's also a member of the university's Board of Trustees, serving since 2019. He graduated from St. Edward's University in 2019 with an MBA. Kyle's commitment to the Holy Cross mission, entrepreneurial businesses, and diverse business networks helps to advance the university's vision for transforming students' lives. Kyle has had a very successful career, founding many organizations, including LifeProof, the consumer electronics company that grew from 3 to 300 employees on 3 continents in just 3 years. Falcon Ventures, Citadel, Real Money Transfer. He's also a founding member of the Soho House Austin, which is a global connection of thought leaders in various creative industries. Kyle is a pioneer of the concept of venture sequencing, a methodology to view and measure the dynamics of innovation assistance of interdependent contributors. This has resulted in new levels of understanding about the innovation process. He's also a founding partner of the Laudato Si Challenge and is a member of the founding patron council for the Humanity 2.0 initiative in collaboration with the Dicastery for promoting integral human development within the Vatican. Kyle served as a sustainable finance coordinator for Pope Francis' Economy of Francesco that produced economic proposals for the Holy See. He serves on boards and advisory positions for organizations such as Singularity University, 1776, Urban X, the Mandes School of Business, and the Board Trustees for St. Edward's University. Kyle is a professor of innovation and disruption management at the Mandes School of Business at St. Edward's University. We are so fortunate to have Kyle joining us tonight, as he is uniquely qualified to speak to ways we should all seek to address the root causes of the many challenges our society faces. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Kyle Ballarta.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fuentes, and thank you so much, Dr. Clark, for having me here to be able to share my small contribution and some of my humble experiences, and hopefully it'll be also an inspiration to you about what we can do to contribute and to be a steward of our gifts and talents to make a just world. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have some slides prepared. And I'm going to assume that everyone can see my first slide. Again, the topic of discussion is around solving global challenges by building community. And I think one of the things that is one of the biggest challenges for us is to realize that some of our global challenges are daunting. A lot of these global challenges feel impossible, but there's something about relying and deepening in our faith that creates simplicity in that. And one of the inspirations of that is His Holiness Pope Francis, his encyclical, the Laudato Si, which offers us a way to reimagine our world, a world where we are community, that we are interdependent with each other. And by simply leaning into that teaching, that realization that's so deeply rooted in our faith, that we can create a cure and love and compassion, care to some of our biggest, deepest sufferings. So something that's daunting as solving our biggest global challenges can be as simple, taught by our faith, and really brought inspiration through this encyclical Laudato Si. So as I mentioned, we all know that some of our biggest sufferings or deepest sufferings in our world are rooted in some of the biggest social and environmental injustices, whether we talk about extreme poverty or water scarcity, homelessness, access to dignified housing and shelter, whether we talk about food scarcity and the desperations around hunger, our ecological challenges and pollution that plagues our communities, even forced migration, geopolitical conflict and military conflict around our nations. We've come to know that these big, deep challenges and sufferings on our world are not narrow and isolated from one another, but they're interconnected, that our challenges are systemic, that the tugs and pulls of the things that we do influence others. And we've come to know that from the realization that our world is interconnected. We see this in nature, that how certain species have become symbiotic with each other. We ourselves are symbiotic with that ecology, that pollinators are connected to flora, and flora feed and nourish fauna. And it is this interconnectedness that is so natural to us, that it is the ebbs and flows and the balance of these systems, these communities, that make our world what it is today. And so understanding that our big, deep sufferings and challenges are interconnected because our world is itself interconnected between these ecosystems, these biomes, and these biospheres. Those systems also connect into the systems we create as kind of these extended phenotypes of our human race. We've extended those systems into things that have helped us flourish, the way that we've been able to increase collaboration and connectedness to each other through economic systems, food and agricultural systems. These systems have the immense ability to create good and to uplift us. But at the same time, because of that interconnectedness, it has the ability to disproportionately also create injustices when those systems are not designed correctly. They also go into our political systems, our constitutional orders. But we start to realize that these natural ecologies are augmented by the way that we ourselves as participants and contributors to these natural systems to be able to extend that into or interconnected as well. And so when we look at this, His Holiness Pope Francis has responded to that reality, that some of the biggest sufferings that we face around our world are again causes because of injustices in those systems, either through the accidental evolution of those systems or the designs of those systems, the way that we have chosen to become consumers or buyers, the behaviors we've taken on to participate in those systems, ultimately likened to how we participate in these communities. To acknowledge that, Pope Francis has invited us to reimagine our world, that we are one community, and that the biggest way that we can come and contribute in our own way to solving some of those biggest challenges, to bringing care and compassion to the biggest and deepest sufferings in around the world, is to acknowledge that interconnectedness with one another in our ecology, our natural gifts that have been given to us, and to imagine what role we play in those communities and systems themselves. And as a real flag in the sand, Pope Francis has written his encyclical Laudato Si. And in that encyclical, again, he acknowledges that it's an integral ecology, that people and planet are one of each other, and together we are a family in this common home of our earth. And again, what he challenges us to look at is beyond the narrowness of ourselves, that we ourselves are contributors to one another in this system, this community of other participants, other contributors as well. He challenges us to look broadly, that not to just serve ourselves, but to serve him through each other. And so with that light, he asks us to really rethink about how do we create care for each other. This is something that we've always challenged ourselves to do as global citizens. What we do within ourselves impact others far and wide. And understanding that is bringing and breathing new inspiration to how we think about building our economic systems, how that it allows us to think about how we measure our actions and how that impacts others across the world. But it allows us to think locally as well as globally, that the things that we do is not isolated or constrained to ourselves, but the things that we do have the power to do immense good near us in our communities locally, but also globally. And that's what the Laudato Si has been able to help us to rethink, and more importantly, inspire us to think about our world and our role in a different light. The title to his encyclical Laudato Si is actually inspired out of a canticle that was written by St. Francis of Assisi. We may know that His Holiness took the name of Francis because of St. Francis's deep affirmation to poverty, and also to his deep love to God's creation. And this is something, again, that was really inspired out of deep St. Francis. Again, to his affirmation to poverty was not one of just getting rid of his worldly things, but more importantly, removing the things that would get in the way with him getting closer every single day to Christ. And I think that's one of the things that was really inspired about this, is to realize that the things, that the creations that we have been given by God are not things that we own, as seen through the inspiration of St. Francis. But again, how do we become stewards of those creations? And in this canticle of creatures, is really one that talks about that. Each one of these stanzas talks about a praise to one of these gifts given by God in his creations. And so each one of these stanzas, you'll see, praise be you. What is Laudato Si? Laudato Si means praise be you. Praise be you, my Lord, to your creatures. Praise be you, my Lord, through sister moon and stars. Praise be you, my Lord, through brothers wind and air. Praise be you, my Lord, through sister water. Praise be you, my Lord, through brother fire. Praise be you, my Lord, through our sister mother earth. And he goes on in this canticle praising God, finding God in all of his creations. And I think this was really the inspiration, and that this was the befitting title to Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si, that again, we praise God by seeing him in all of his creations. And it should challenge us, again, to rethink about our role and our relationship with all these creations, including our ecology and these natural creations, and how that combines in our way to think about how we serve the sick, the poor, the needy, the marginalized. And so this is a reference of the title to his encyclical, Laudato Si, meaning praise be you. And so this is praise to God through all of his creations, a befitting title to this encyclical. The encyclical talks about this, and you know, one of the things that really stood out, I think this is a quote that really illustrates a call to action here. In his Laudato Si, he says, "Today, however, we have to realize that a true ecological approach always becomes a social approach." And again, talking about how ecology is interrelated to society. If we want to solve for our biggest societal challenges where the root of suffering occurs, we cannot achieve that without bringing in the ecological question into this. And he furthermore discussed it must integrate questions of justice in debates on the environment, so as to hear both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. And so he asks us simply to be able to hear the pains and sufferings that are equally deeply rooted together, that of the poor is also rooted in the cry of the earth. And so again, this challenge to help us reimagine what is our role in this, to be able to hear first the cry of the suffering, but also to understand how that is deeply rooted in terms of this ecological question. And more than that, it becomes a call to action. And so if you look into the encyclical, it goes deep into this, and there's a few themes here that I believe that are common to this. Number one in the theme, the real takeaway is we're connected, we're interdependent. These are the foundations of community. And I think the thing that it really challenges to realize is that this interdependency does not occur in only likeness. It occurs in diversity, that it challenges us to connect and to acknowledge these interdependencies, especially with unlikely characters. And so that's why it's very important for us to understand how to meet people where they are, and that unlikely contributors to these communities, these interdependencies, is what makes our world and ultimately makes our communities. That's very much a core to the theme of this encyclical. One of the additional themes that is very much noted is an affirmance to care for all of God's creation. And again, this reference to St. Francis's canticle is really a really good illustration of that we have to acknowledge that we do not own these creations, but we are quite simply stewards of God's creations, that we find God all around us, especially in these creations. So a care for the poor, the care for suffering, we also have to be able to care for all of God's creations to be able to achieve that. So a care for all of God's creation, again, finding God in all of creation, is one that affirms us in our role, not as monopolizers or owners of these things, but quite more apt as stewards of it. Another theme that comes out of this is the encyclical asks us to rethink about our systems that we build. And again, this, even though we talk about, I believe the ecology is one that is very topical today, it's deeply rooted in our Catholic teachings, our Catholic social teachings. And this is, again, a challenge for us to reconcile the heart and mind. This is a way for us to be able to challenge ourselves. Again, how do we think of our roles in these systems as global citizens, as new citizens of the world, that the small things that we do have cascading effects into the world at large. And so whether we're playing a role in it as a consumer or our behaviors as citizens or as designers of these citizens, it asks us to understand how to rethink about those systems, but to do that on the foundations of the heart. So this is one of the challenges that really is called for us in this encyclical. The other theme is around solidarity. Is we cannot achieve this, number one, without unity. This is one that acknowledges that we are a global community, that these interdependencies are considered unified. But for us to effectuate change equally, we have to achieve solidarity and unity to do so. So it challenges us to think about how can we build community, but yes, but how do we extend that community to reach others, to reach people that are some of the unlikely characters for us to be able to reach. but it asks us to build solidarity with us, with unlikely characters especially. The other thing that comes out of this is creating a cure with care. One of the things that is important in this is it's not just about curing care or creating cures, but more importantly, how do we create dignity in the work that we do? How do we now create, acknowledge the humanity at the core of what we're doing? And so it's not quite simply, how do we just solve the problem and move on with our lives? But how, with the heart, do we create cures with cares, to be present with suffering and quite simply just hear that suffering and allow us to be able to use that as the core for us to bring dignity in the way that we're thinking about building community. And lastly, the way that Pope Francis writes this is a call to action. So with this, we have to take on the task to discern about our role in this community at large, with the globe, as well as locally, with zeal. What does that mean for us? And so if you look at these common themes, these are the foundations to build community. The encyclical challenges us to realize that we are a part of a global community, that these challenges that we are setting out to solve for are interconnected with numerous and complex contributors, but there's a simplicity to that, which is we can build community to be able to achieve that. So these themes are the foundations to community. He says in this encyclical, we need to strengthen this conviction that we are one single family. And that's what's really exciting about this, is the foundations of those themes build community. And to be able to achieve some of these solutions that we hope to find, community allows us to do two things. Community allows us to mobilize action, to mobilize change. And so when we talk about this Laudato Si, Pope Francis, this is a movement for that he's called us to be able to spur along. And community allows us to do that. It's hard to do that individually by ourselves, but in community, we can mobilize change and action. The second part about community that's very powerful is in community, we can extend that care to those that historically would never be able to do that. And again, building on top of the mobilization of action, it allows us to extend that ways and expand our heart and our reach of care in ways that we've never been able to do so before. And that's really inspired by the encyclical, one, to acknowledge that that kind of community exists, but number two, that community is the practice to be able to achieve that. And so I've had the pleasure of being able to collaborate with the Dicastery for promoting integral human development. And a lot of these initiatives have been that practice, has put that call to action in practice. This is a picture of the Laudato Si challenge that I've been a part of the last about 4 years. We're going to be meeting again in Rome at the beginning of May. And over the years, this has been a platform, again, specifically focusing on displaced populations, forced migrations, refugees, the suffering that comes with that. And the platform has convened unlikely characters to be able to collaborate in community to action and support entrepreneurial initiatives, ventures, and technologies that address systemic issues that are related to forced migration, whether it's talking about food scarcity, desertification that is creating a lot of these migrations, forced migrations. There are solutions that can be creatively enacted, but it's the convening of community or unlikely characters in community, both in different industries, within the Vatican, or even in public sector collaborations that allows us to be able to lock our arms together to be able to bring these solutions into reality and to impact the neediest populations and to assuage the suffering around our world. So number one, the Laudato Si challenge has been one that has acknowledged the systemic contributors in these interdependencies that play into solving these challenges. But in itself, to be able to enact that change, we ourselves have had to build community that has been inspired by the encyclical itself. This is a picture of Cardinal Turkson, the prefect of this Dicastery, showing a picture of a boat of refugees coming in from Africa into Greece. Again, reminding us of this very important work that we're doing to serve these types of people. And again, another initiative as inspiration has been the Humanity 2.0 initiative. This initiative has helped us or challenged us to reimagine what does humanity look like in today's world? Obviously, today's world comes with dynamic complexities. With that asks us, how do we now think about human flourishing in that world? And out of that has come the foundations of a maternal health laboratory, as well as a school for business ethics in collaboration with the Pope's University, the Pontificato Laternesi, that has developed pedagogy around how do we equip our executives and our future business leaders to become good corporate citizens, again, in understanding the potential impacts to ecology and to our social justices. And in this platform, it has convened unlikely characters, both in faith communities, in even interfaith communities, as well as public and private sector collaborations. And through that convening, it has allowed us to be able to meet each other where we are at, in a common place, to be able to serve our neediest of populations and people around the world, simply by building community. And as mentioned too, the Economy of Francesco is another initiative around the Laudato Si action plan, where we've convened academics, entrepreneurs, around building economic systems that can incorporate the ecology in our natural systems in terms of the systems that we build to serve our people. And this is a picture of Muhammad Yunus, a Nobel Prize winner, that has been deep in a lot of this work. We were meant to meet in Assisi around March, whenever COVID hit. And so a lot of our work has been virtual over the last 2 years. We'll be in Assisi in September, but a lot of the work has convened so many people around the world, young economists and academics and entrepreneurs, to reimagine what our new economic systems could look like, again, to factor in humanity into it, but also in the considerations of all of God's creations, which is our natural ecology. And this movement has been, again, a result of community in action to be able to make this change occur. And so again, community is something that's very powerful. It allows us to, again, achieve two things that can enact change. And number one of it is community allows us to mobilize action. It allows us to take ideas and inspirations, but it's only in community, when we come together, that we can actually put that into action, that prayers or petition can now be met with action. And the second part of it is community is not meant to be stagnant. Community is meant to evolve. It's an organic thing. Community is meant to grow, and with that growth, extend our care to those that need to be reached, especially the ones on the fringes. And so this is some of the powerful learnings, not only about what we are called to do in the encyclical, but more importantly, how we should go about and approach those solutions. How do we approach our solutions, not for a narrow, individualized perspective, but how do we build community to effectuate that change? And so the encyclical has been an inspiration, at least for me, in a lot of these initiatives, but it's really taken on an inspiration in the work that I do as a venture capitalist. And so Falcon Ventures is a venture capital firm that focuses on big global challenges as big commercial opportunities. We focus on disruptive technologies. what we call frontier technologies that are solving some of these biggest pain points. And so what we've been able to do is show that these challenges are inextricably connected to the business opportunities, that we've been thoughtful in the design that if these are big global pain points, that solving for them will also be some of the biggest value opportunities. And so when we look at some of the opportunities that we look at, a lot of the technologies that we've been able to support, to catalyze, they range from the world's first autonomous drone networks that have now reimagined a world of access. They have now been flying over the United States and Asia, in the EU, and as well as the Middle East, creating new access to life-saving drugs, medicine, testing, vaccines. And a lot of this has been the inspiration, again, that this is a solution that dynamically reimagines the way that we approach these challenges. We have technologies that 3D print homes. This is a company called Icon that is 3D printing homes. Initially, 3D printed the first neighborhood in Latin America for families that live under $3 a day. The dynamics that are impacted by 3D printing constructions both impact the economics in terms of profitability to serve communities that historically would not be served. We're talking about low income home populations that are constrained around home accessibility, but also it talks about how we look at sustainability, how we look at home construction without waste. We can now print things on demand without even the supply chain constraints or waste that is around home construction. So it's changing both this social and environmental considerations. Again, disruptive technologies that are solving for not only a valuable problem set, but also one that is a really big pain point that has caused a lot of social and environmental suffering. We also have technologies related to early childhood development. One of these solutions is a smart bassinet that has allowed us to mitigate the SIDS, son and infant death syndrome that has pained so many families, as well as the trajectory of what human flourishing looks like at early stages. And so these are examples of technologies that really have come out of a thesis that we've looked at, again, where we've taken the encyclical and realized that, again, these are opportunities for us, that we realize that our world is so interconnected that we shouldn't be thinking about the widgets or the technologies, but realizing that opportunities rely on problem sets that can be solved through these technologies. And so we've really looked at solving for energy systems that can accelerate clean energy for us, how we reimagine our food and agriculture systems, one that can be regenerative and carbon negative. We've even looked at health and wellness as one of these opportunities, even deep technologies and how we solve for a circular economy questions around redesigning waste and pollution out of our production systems. And then also mobility, how do we create clean and equitable transportation systems? And so the encyclical, as you can imagine, challenged us to reimagine our world, but also reimagine how do we use our gifts and our talents in a way that can contribute to this movement, that the deepest sufferings can be assuaged by the way that we think about opportunities or redesign for these opportunities. And we've really found that, especially in our investment theses around our venture capital firm. And so, this is befitting that this is a Holy Cross conversation, because Blessed Basil Moreau would have it said that, how we educate the mind will change with the times, but how we cultivate the heart is and will remain timeless. And so as this encyclical challenges us to reimagine what we build in relation to our world, it reaffirms again that the heart is the foundation of that. And so in that discernment of how we bring care and we extend and open up our heart to extend that care, it challenges us to rethink about how we approach this, and even the way that we approach venture, innovation, or even venture capital. And so when we look at this, it made us broaden the way that we look at our world. The encyclical talks about how we broaden our world out of our narrow lens of our individual self. An excellent brain or an excellent intellect would in business would focus in venture as an execution focus. It would talk about how do we maximize first mover advantage, competitive advantage, the market potential, product market fit. All these things have been ingrained in us in business school. And that has taught us how to maximize the success of product market fit. What we've come to learn is that's a very incomplete way to look at things, that innovation doesn't come narrowly in just the execution focus, but it comes in the idea that the technologies we build also are interconnected with co-innovations and co-adopters. What are the interdependent relationships that also play into the success, the viability of these types of technologies? And so that challenge has also inspired us to look at venture, innovation, and technology in a dynamically different way. One that, again, historically or traditionally, we would look at venture as maximizing the product. How do we create better products that are better than the ones before? And we've understood that this is a very incomplete way of looking at venture creation technology. And historically, also, that's been the reason why that venture investing has been a very risky proposition. It's a very small percentage that technologies actually become successful. And so the reason why we extended that, we've taken a new lens at technology, one that technology and a product actually plays a piece in a system or a community of interdependent relationships of channel partners, customers, regulatory stakeholders, manufacturing stakeholders, material supply stakeholders. But we start to realize that technology is not isolated unto itself, that the viability, the defensibility, the potential for scale actually occurs in the value that's created and aligned with all these interdependent relationships. You could have technology that is compelling, but if there's no way for you to manufacture that technology, there's no way for you to deliver that. So the inspirations that we see from the encyclical, from a pragmatic perspective, and again, challenging our intellect, challenges us to look at even at innovation in a different way, which is innovation occurs in systems, and systems are dynamic. And this is a better way for us to look at how, to support these ventures and these technologies that can create a positive impact on the world. It requires us to look at them in community as well. And so where in traditional venture creation and innovation, we would look at this as a relationship between the potential benefit to the cost and what does that mean for viability for those technologies. And so if we look at innovation now in systems or in community, we now have to look at those considerations amongst all these interdependent relationships, that these other relationships, the cost to them also affects for them to be able to become aligned in our community or our value network, and ultimately affects the viability of those solutions. And so it's the total cost over the total benefit in consideration of our community, of these networks, that allow us to be more effective in supporting these technologies, and especially if these technologies have the ability to impact our world, both in social and environmental considerations, in very large ways. And the real pragmatic example of this, again, is the difference between Tesla and Hendrik Fisker. Everyone knows that electric cars and EV, electrical vehicles are coming about. Everyone is very familiar with Tesla having built the category, been the leader in the space. But really, it was Hendrik Fisker, as an example, that really focused on building out the technology alone, the design. They focus on the car alone. Again, this is really a good example of the traditional way of how do you just focus on the product or the technology alone. And Hendrik Fisker was very much narrowly focused on that. Fisker never had a chance to build the category, even though a lot of people would argue that it's a beautifully designed car. Tesla in itself not only built the car, but they redesigned the manufacturing process. They looked at what lithium production looks like, what does that manufacturing look like with the gigafactory, and ultimately they had to change the distribution model, going direct to consumer. So it was these interdependent community considerations that built the category, and that's the reason why we feel this movement towards electric vehicles that have been spurred along by Tesla, not because they focus purely on the isolation of the technology, but they focus on the interdependencies in this network, this community. And so you can see in this approach from a pragmatic perspective, one that's deeply rooted in community, is the thing that pragmatically brings ideas like this into reality. And so again, these are the things that we've brought into the way that we approach innovation. This is an example, again, of our technology icon, building homes for some of our low income and our homeless communities. But we also have to realize that this is the approach to pragmatically bring about these types of solutions that, again, are ideas, but they can bring them into reality. And to remind ourselves that this approach of community, that is a pragmatic approach, is deeply rooted in the heart of our things, and that the technologies, the solutions, the ventures, the innovations that we spur along have the ability to touch people in a very human way, and that we should never forget that. But again, as Basil Moreau had challenged us to again rethink the way that we think in the evolution of our world, it must be deeply rooted in something that will always stay constant, which is our heart. And in that heart, again, we find Christ as our constant North Star. And so the way that we build those systems, the way that we participate in those systems can have the deepest impacts to bringing joy and to bringing care and compassion to some of our biggest sufferings around the world. Basil Moreau, again, will have us affirming to this, again, talking about our faith as well as reason. Again, a reconciliation of the heart and mind demonstrates conclusively that in union, there is a strength. Union gives rise to strength by blending all parts into the whole, like mortar, which holds the stones of a building together and unites them all with the keystone. And again, this is something that the Laudato Si encyclical reminds us and challenges us to think about, is a reconciliation of the heart and the mind that brings us together in community to solve some of these biggest challenges. As you can see how the inspiration of that has allowed us to take things that have been pieces that sit separately together, but in unity together, brings about an amazing impact that can be felt, and again, in stewardship to God's creations. So that is very befitting, that is aligned very much in our encyclical. And you may be asking ourselves, what does this mean for me? We all come from different walks of lives. Am I asking you to solve our biggest global challenges? No, I think everyone can build or can create, contribute to solving some of the biggest global challenges, even in just the circles that you are in, the life that you are walking in. So everyone plays a big role. But what does this mean for me? And so taking the learnings from the encyclical and what that can challenge us to look at. Number one, I think it asks us to be present with the pain of those suffering, feeling suffering and hearing the cry for the world. The encyclical #1 asks us to be present with that pain. Again, creating a cure with care. It challenges us not to simply rush to being come up with cures or to be monopolizers of these solutions, but more importantly, to be present with suffering, to acknowledge that suffering. From those foundations, we can meet people where they are at, but community is first met by feeling people's pain. And so anyone, wherever you were at, whether you're talking about your family or passing by a neighbor across on the street that is feeling suffering, how do we challenge ourselves to be able to be present with someone's suffering and not just pass that on? Again, challenge ourselves to find Christ in others, but as a result, also be a Christ for them in return. The other part is meeting others where they are. Again, understanding that we in community, we are meant to build community, especially with others that are not like us. That harmony is not the absence of differences, but it's the equilibrium between them, that it's in community that we can create change. And so it allows us first to develop the grace to be able to not ask people to come to where we are, but challenge us to meet each other where we are at. And that is something that that is so core to the Holy Cross congregation and these charisms. And this is something is simple for anyone, whatever walk of life that you are participating in, can achieve by just meeting people where they are, simply building community with each other. The other part is bless all things you touch and bless all those that you come across. And by being God's hands and feet on this earth, we every single day we are set out to be on our walks of life. But we touch many different things, whether it's in our work or it's the things that we touch in our passing. We come across people, whether it's our work colleagues or the people that are affected by the things that we create. But we're simply asked in the days and the times that we are given to simply, through being God's hands and feet, how do we bless those things that we come across in our daily lives? How do we bless each other, all the people that we come across? And again, there are so many complexities to the world, but this is something affirmed in our faith that is simple, that simplifies that we can challenge ourselves to bless all the things that we come to touch. The other part is utilize the excellence of the mind, but never at the expense of the heart. Again, this is the reconciliation of the heart and mind. This challenges us to reimagine what we can do. What role can we play in our world? Again, at the affirmment in the foundations of the heart, we're constantly challenged to exercise these intellectual muscles. As you can see from our firm, of how we've approached venture capital and how we've even become more effective in catalyzing these types of frontier technologies. That has been a result of exercising new muscles around our intellect and our approach, but it has been through the inspiration of the heart. The encyclical is exactly like that, which is affirming us in the heart, and again finding Christ in that sacred heart, that we are guided to use our blessings and our talents in a way that can be a use of his hands and feet in our world. And the last part of it is, again, to have zeal in everything we are called to do. I think everyone in their walks of lives can find fulfillment and joy, especially in the diligence of their work, not to be sloth or to have sloth in their daily lives, but again, to find zeal. And again, I think on the foundations of simply hearing and feeling the suffering in the world, to care about something. And I think this is something that's so deeply rooted in Holy Cross, is to be able to have zeal in everything that we do. So whatever you end up doing, whether it's a simple task of cleaning up the kitchen, or picking up that baby in the middle of the night, or the big tasks that you're challenged to do that affects the sick and the poor, or even your work that touches supply chains that serve certain types of people that are a part of that work. Have zeal in that work to make sure that you are making sure that everything that is being touched comes with care and comes with compassion. So again, solving some of the biggest challenges can be a daunting thing, but it doesn't have to be. Everyone playing their role. God asks everyone, everyone has a mission that is unique to them. And our encyclical reminds us that that these things are very achievable, even in our small corners, but even at the world at large. The things that we do have a cascading effect across our world. And each one of us is very much playing a very important role, guided by God's loving hand. So thank you so much for having me. And I'd love to be able to take any questions that might be there, but thank you so much for being able to allow me to share my inspirations from the Laudato Si encyclical and how that's affected or impacted our work. And hopefully it inspires you to also reimagine the way that you may be able to play a very important role as well. So thank you so much.
Fantastic, Kyle. No, we thank you, and thank you for the time preparation that you put in tonight's presentation, the zeal, the authenticity by which you presented it with. And gosh, I can't begin to tell you how deeply edifying it is to hear how Holy Cross has impacted your heart and your mind through the education that you received at St. Edward's University and through your continued involvement with the Board of Trustees. And I couldn't help but see the links when you shared the themes of Laudato Si to those resonant themes of Holy Cross, right? Zeal, the balance of heart and mind, meeting people where they are. And I think you addressed at the end so well the question of, well, where do we begin? Like, how do we tackle this? I know that in the business classes and in Cliff Hurst's class, I'm sure, and Kathleen Wilburn's class, they're learning about wicked problems, right? How do you solve wicked problems? Well, you know what? You may not solve wicked problems, but you can at least begin by addressing, by making things better to the best of your ability. And such a great example of that is right here in the city of Austin with Mobile Loaves and Fishes and the Community First Village. They have some of those 3D homes in that community. They've provided the most dignified of spaces for transitioning men and women, homeless families, to begin to restore their lives, right? And it is such a beautiful work of resurrection. By the way, we're really fortunate that they're going to be with us at Convocation at the end of March as well. And so you'll get a chance, people will get a chance to learn more about Mobile Loaves and Fishes and even meet some of the residents there who are going to share their artwork and other creations with us. And so we do invite you, we've got a couple of minutes remaining. We invite any questions that people may have and comments, of course, as well. We do have one question already that we're going to start with, Kyle.
Sure.
So in our communities, in our country and in our communities, how can we go about shifting from a more profit-driven economy towards a human-centered economy? And is this possible within a capitalist framework? And then as a continuation of that, are profit and humanity permanently opposed, or can we hold them together, right? Huge questions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think this is a challenge that is beset upon us, right? Is how do we think creatively to be able to reconcile things that we historically thought were separate or delineated, planet, profits, impact, and commercial opportunity. And as an example, you saw in the way that we approach venture capital, again, our impact is inextricably connected to the value proposition of our businesses. By Icon being able to scale their technologies, they're naturally scaling the impact of how it could be reached, right? So there's a lot of creativity that is challenging to us to be able to rethink about how we extrapolate value or redesign how we measure value. And so when you look at our investment thesis, it's a really great example of that, where the success of our ventures is also the success and the growth of the impact to some of the challenges we've identified that are big business opportunities. And so even in our venture capital firm, we've been able to bring people into venture investing that historically would have never been likely candidates for that. We have investors that are legacy in petroleum and oil and gas that are now invested deeply in renewable energy solutions. Not because we had an ethical or moral discussion with them, even though those are always fun to have. We have been thoughtful about the design that creates that alignment to welcomes people into that opportunity, right? So I think that it is possible to be able to design for humanity in our economic systems, in the way that we design for our financial instruments. And that was the challenge that we put on ourselves as venture capitalists. And so even a lot of the work that we're doing with Economy of Francesco is even expanding the way that we measure value, right? Is how do we now factor in the impacts of our natural ecology and humanity into how we measure the direct financial transaction. You're starting to see that, again, the encyclical is an example of how we broaden or widen our considerations away from the narrow considerations of ourselves, but also what are the other considerations of the things that are also touched by it, whether it's the production process abroad. Does it impact people that are making my products? Does that negatively impact people? But also time horizons, right? Does that we think about our transactions narrowly in these small windows, but does that extend further about, does this plastic bottle impact something down the road, even further down in terms of longer time horizons? And so it's expanding the way that we look at all the system and community considerations, but also is expanding our time horizons. What does that mean for the potential cost that I have today is no longer isolated by a single transaction in that moment, but also has a cost in the future. And so those are the challenges that are now taken in consideration about how we talk about our economic systems, but also the way that we invest and how we develop consumer behavior and everything. So as we think about those considerations, you're starting to realize that, again, we are interconnected, we are interrelated, and those are the things that are all going to be synthesized in our considerations of how we communicate value, how we measure value. And again, it's a reconciliation of the heart and the mind.
So inspirational. It reminds me of the quote by Mahatma Gandhi, who said, to be the change that you want to see in the world, right? And Kyle, that's exactly what you're doing, is that you're being the change that you want to see in the world. You're setting the pace as a global thought leader, and inspiration for so many of us. And I hope that more and more of the leaders, the businessmen and women, the politicians and others are listening to the messages like the ones that we've heard tonight. And I always think about the future of the world as one who's worked for 33 years in education, secondary ed, and higher ed. Sometimes people will look at me and they'll talk sort of downwardly about today's students, and I think to myself, oh my gosh, you have no idea. These young people, they're going to change the world. They are changing the world already. They care more deeply about global citizenship and about creation and one another and accepting one another's differences and finding dignity in all people, more so than previous generations. And at places like this at St. Edward's University, it makes me so proud to be a part of that. Going to just read for you a couple of quick comments, and then we're going to wrap up here. But thank you for these comments that have come through. Sister Ramon says, I am amazed and impressed by this witnessing of Kyle. It warms my Holy Cross heart. Thank you. A true blessing to today's broken world. And as well, Kyle, Sister Elaine says, your work and presentation are incredible. You are about the transformation of this world in a way that illuminates and honors the mission of Father Moreau for today and tomorrow. And what a fitting way for us to wrap up tonight. AJ, if you can go ahead and pull up our final couple of slides here as we wrap up. Throughout the year, we've focused on this theme of forming citizens for this world and for heaven. And tonight you learned so much about radical solidarity and really what it means to be global citizens. Thank you so much for that, Kyle. And really the hallmark program of the year for the Holy Cross Institute is this upcoming convocation, March 24th through the 26th. We are so delighted to bring it back in person again. Since 2018, I think was the last time that we were able to gather in person for this. And so you can see we have some stellar speakers there. Father Tom O'Hara, former provincial superior for the U.S. Province of Priests, former president at King's College, Dr. Julianne Wallace, who's the director of mission and charism, apostolic mission and charism for the U.S. Province of Priests and Brothers, Father James Heft. We have Father Heft coming to us, Kyle, because of you and your friendship and personal relationship. And he's going to talk about the role that Catholic higher education has on forming citizens for this world and for heaven. And then Carrie Robinson, how do we cultivate youth, faith in young people? She's coming to us from the Leadership Roundtable. Chris Lowney, another internationally renowned speaker and writer, book author, is going to speak about the role of lay leadership in the church. And he'll be citing his book, Everyone Leads. And then, of course, Gloria Purvis, who has just been a remarkable voice, particularly for our church and racial justice and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so these are just, these are just your keynote speakers for Convocation 2022. This is an event we put on for free. And so we hope that more of you will be able to join us and that you'll be able to promote this in your communities. Next slide, please. We also want to promote a really exciting event. Go backwards, please. Yeah, there we go. That's happening here on the campus of St. Edward's University. There is a beautiful art exhibition here on our campus in the Monday Library. Those of you that are local are invited to attend a special reception, community art reception with some of the artists and Holy Cross Brothers who will be in attendance as well. It will take place on Thursday, March 3rd, so just a couple of short weeks from now. And then last but not least, we invite you again to provide any feedback that you may have on this program tonight. And so you can take a picture of that QR code and maybe take a moment or two to enter in your thoughts and feedback. And while you do that, I'm just going to again thank Kyle Ballarta for being with us this evening, Dr. Montse Fuentes, for your leadership and for creating St. Edward's University with a commitment to being a destination university for a more just world. I want to thank my team, AJ Valverde and Meg Sturgeon, who are just incredible partners in this work and ministry here in the Holy Cross Institute office. I want to thank again Catholic Climate Covenant and Dan Misla for your sponsorship and support for us tonight. And that's how you reach us. There we all are. And as we sign off tonight, I'm going to sign off as we do with all things. AJ, go back to that last quote, please. There we go. As a reminder that what we do is a work of resurrection. It's meant to be a liberation from the darkness of ignorance. It's meant to be a vehicle for the transformation of society. And it's meant to be a process that helps to make all things, especially the persons engaged in it, new. And I know after tonight, I feel renewed in this work, in this important work of resurrection. And so let us all remain disciples with hope to bring. May God bless you. Thank you and good night.